universities should be joining us. So go ahead and tell us anything you want to share in the chat. And we have that pulled up. Dr. Beth Fleener is in the room, and she's monitoring the chat, and I'll be monitoring the chat on my phone. So without further ado, let's get started. So this is the Center for Research on Teaching and Learning Excellence, CRTLE, and we're excited to partner with Academy of Distinguished Teachers and Regents Outstanding Teaching Award winners to give their lightning round talks. So we'll time you, and then we'll ring a bell. No, when you're done, and we'll just pass the mic literally to the next person. So we have Dr. Barbara Shipman from the Math Department, and she's going to start us out. See if you believe my argument. We'll do that in just a minute. Followed by Dr. Rebecca Dean, Dr. Diane Mitschke, the esteemed Dr. Ken Roemer is sharing with us today. So the great thing about these is they're across departments. I think we have 4 colleges represented, so it should be really interesting to see ideas. I think everyone's ideas are extremely student-centered. So that's what I noticed when I was putting these all together. So see what ideas you can get about staying student-centered, staying engaged. I think a lot of these are fun the way they put their slides together. And so the challenge is 5 minutes. Let's see if we can do it. 5 minutes. 5 minutes, and then we'll pass the mic. We're going to be joined by Diane Mitschke on Teams, and Karen Magruder will round us out on Teams as well. So bear with us if we have any technical snafus today, but again, we're excited. And if you have access to the chat, you can type there. If not, you can just have a listen. So I am going to, Faculty Playbook is our fun name. Oh, I wanted to make a few quick announcements. We have a podcast with Dr. Kevin Shug on our CRTLE YouTube channel, and he's talking about how to win a teaching award. So some people wrote when they registered, they wanted to learn more about how do you win a teaching award. So if you want to, if the presenters today want to add a little tidbit about that, or if does this tie in, to your overall philosophy of teaching, you can share that. So Kevin Shug, I don't know if he's here online today, but he's definitely on our YouTube channel for CRTLE. And then if you go to Pedagogy Next, we also have a podcast. It's on YouTube, it's on Apple Podcast, and it's on Spotify. So we're trying to promote that. We're rebooting it and getting more podcasts up. Dr. Dean is second. So come on up, Dr. Shipman, and we'll hear from you. And let me get you up here. I'm going to hand you the mic and the clicker.
Thank you, Peggy. I'm real excited this is happening.
Yeah.
So I am your colleague, Barbara Shipman, and here's a fun way to help students pay close attention. Ask them if they believe your argument. You can do it correctly or incorrectly, but either way, the students have to decide. So now I want to try this on you. So here we go. See if you believe my argument. We have an ant and a bear and a cougar. If you add up the weight of the ant and the weight of the bear, that's exactly equal to 2 times the weight of the cougar. That just works out exact. I checked it out. It's pretty literal. So there we go. Now, how about let's subtract the weight of the bear from both sides? Do you believe that's what we would get? I think I believe that. Now, let's subtract 2 times the weight of the cougar from both sides. I say that this is also correct. Now, let's look at the left-hand sides in green. If we multiply them together, I say we get A times A minus 2C. And I also say that if you multiply the right-hand sides together, you'll get minus B times 2C minus B, and I say those are equal. Well, how about let's multiply all those through. So see, I get A squared right here, and then A times minus 2C, I'll get minus 2AC. And then over here, you see that minus B and the minus B, I'll get B squared. Believe that? And what do we get here? I'm getting a minus 2bc. All right, now I'm going to take that equation and put it at the top. I won't change it at all on you. So that's the blue one. What I want to do now is add c squared to both sides. So we get this. I say they're still equal. Now, whether or not you remember that, it doesn't matter because we can check. Let's see if I can write the green side like that. Well, let's see. A times a, there's my a squared. And a and minus c, another a times minus c, that's 2 minus ac's. And what's a minus c times a minus c? I get c squared. So I say that green part is correct. And I want to do the same thing on the other side. Now, guess what? If you multiply something by itself, that's just the thing squared. So I'm going to write it like that. And to get rid of the square, we take a square root, and we get this. And if you add c to both sides, we get a equals b. The weight of the ant equals the weight of the bear. And did you believe my argument? Isn't that amazing? I'm so happy to see Nila in our argument, in our audience. She's from physics, and she would have never believed that. But we proved it, as you can see. Well, I guess we have a minute. Do y'all believe that? Do you believe my argument? You believed my argument. So then you believe that the weight of the ant equals the weight of the bear. I mean, you like really believe that. Do you? Because look what we started with. Tell me when to stop. This is just discussion. I mean, we started with an actual ant and a bear and a cougar, and this was how it worked, right? We started with that. So if you add the weight of the bear and the ant, you get 2 times the weight of the cougar. So imagine a tiny little ant and a huge big bear and 2 cougars. If you add up the weight of the tiny ant and the big bear, you really could get 2 times the weight of the cougar, like literally, right? And the ant could be tiny and the bear could be huge, right? And that could literally happen that way. And just using that, we are getting that the weight of that ant, tiny as it is, I did something, really is the weight of the cougar. I mean, the bear, right? So you're stuck believing that unless you find a mistake in my argument. You think there is one? You think there's a mistake in my argument? I mean, there has to be. Yeah, students pay attention when I do things like that. And then I'll prove things that are like true and correct. And I say, watch out, check my argument. And they're like, and I finish it and it's all good. And they're like,
Barbara, you gotta put
really
your mic up.
nice.
Can't hear you online.
Oh, yeah, and they're looking at what I did correctly, and they're like, well, let's see. So that makes me really happy when they do that. And one time, I don't like to just put something up and say, this is true, here we go. So I put something up because we were short on time. And I said, well, this time I'm just going to have to put the statement up and show you. And as soon as I wrote the statement, someone said, false. And I was so happy because they were thinking about it. But there was a mistake in that argument. The weight of the ant can't be the weight of the bear. And it's a mistake that so many, tell me when I have to stop. It's a mistake that so many people make, is that I did it in here and I hid it there. I hid it in there. So many students at every level, graduate, whatever, think that, well, if you take the square root of x squared, you get x. Okay, let's try that. What's minus 5 squared? 0.5. Well, if you take the square root of that, square root is going to be the positive value, you get 5. So 5 is not minus 5, right? And that's where it fails. So if you go back to, there was a place, remember how the ant is so much smaller than the cougar? And if you do a minus c, that's actually negative because I'm subtracting the bigger one. So I had a minus c squared, I square rooted it and got a minus c. That would be like saying I got minus 5, but you can't get minus 5 out of the square root. It's always the positive one for clarity, right? If you want the negative one, you put the minus, but I didn't. And students do that all the time. They did it in my complex variables class on their homework. I was like, but I already explained that and told them over and over, like, you don't do that. And we like practiced it every time it came up. I made a deal out of it. They did it again on the homework. So I presented that to them and they got it. And I said, yeah, but you did that on your homework right here. And they all laughed. So it's really fun because it's kind of a natural thing, right? It seems so natural. And there are other ones too. Like if I tell them I'd love to give a speech at the College of Science because everybody thinks derivative of sine is cosine. Well, it is, I hope so. They're graduating, right? But not in degrees, only in radians. Did you know that, Frank? Did you know that? Only in radians, not in degrees. And that's like crazy. So it's just fun.
All right, a round of applause for Barbara. For Barbara from the math department. Thank you. And we're going to pass it on and you can introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rebecca Dean. I'm a professor of political science, and I also serve as the senior associate dean in the College of Liberal Arts. Oh, thank you. Okay, so my dog has fleas. What in the world, right? So when I was working on the PowerPoint, I typed in my dog has fleas, and it gave me this sad little image, which I'm a cat mom, but I appreciate dogs as an adjacent species, and both to me and the cat. So I thought that was very sweet. So what in the world? My dog has fleas. So one of the things, well, let me start with this quote. I saw this on an Instagram reel, as most of us find things. The single best predictor of whether a student has an extraordinary time in college is whether or not they get to know at least one faculty member well enough so that they stay in touch with them for the rest of their lives. And we all have this experience where students from decades ago come back to us. I'm going to circle back to this idea. I know that many of us at the university have been working on a sense of belonging and how that's just so very important to students. But I wanted to make that a little bit more personal in the way that when students feel a sense of belonging, it leads to a sense of self-efficacy, which is just a fancy way of saying, I can do this. And when they believe that they can do this, then they do the thing. What can faculty do to encourage connection? I believe this with all my heart. Start as you mean to go on. In other words, think about the end goal and work toward that end goal at the very beginning. If it's important to you to create a connection with your students, if it's important to you that you know their name and that they have a sense of you as a human, do that at the very beginning. Okay, so my dog has fleas. In my upper division courses, I would pass out 3x5 cards because I'll tell you why in a minute, instead of just doing it on Canvas. And I would say, I would like for you, please, and I would write this on the board, I would like for you, please, to share your name, your email, your major and minor, and then something interesting about you that will help me remember your name. Now, if you tell me that I'm Joe and my dog has fleas, forever in my mind, you're going to be Joe whose dog has fleas. And so while they were doing the 3x5 cards, I would do the same thing on the board. Oh, and hometown. I would also ask them for their hometown. So I would do the same thing with me. I would say I'm Rebecca Dean. In college, I majored in political science and I minored in French. My hometown is Jamestown, Ohio, which is a little bitty rural community in Southern Ohio. And something interesting about me is that I love to knit. I love to read, I love to watch television, I love sports, and often I do all of those things at once. And then they would pass in their cards, and I would try then each class period to learn new names. But I would do it in sort of a fun way. So I would say, Frank, I'm looking at your card. Yeah, me too. And everybody would be like, what? What? Me too? Well, you know, Frank says, I love to watch NASCAR. Me too, Frank. And then I would say, I know, only makes left turns. How silly. And then somebody else was like, oh, Professor likes NASCAR. And maybe that breaks the ice a little bit. And I could do that across the class periods and slowly learn their names. Well, scale. That works in a class of 40. Doesn't really work in a class of 140. So what do you do there? Well, I am stealing this next one from my colleague in the Department of Music, Jack Unzinger, who just shared this with me this week. What he does, and it's similar, but what he does is his participation measure is asking a question. This is in a UNIV class, just asking a simple question. What's on your mind this week? What's getting you excited about college? What's making you anxious? And then anonymously sharing those things out, because you do not want to call somebody out on what's making them anxious. But Susie Snowflake in the back row recognizes that's her thing. And then maybe Susie can come up to Jack after class and say, hey, I really appreciated that you read my thing and I feel seen. And that's a connection. And maybe Susie goes on to take more classes from Professor Unzinger and develops an even deeper relationship. And then finally, even the smallest things matter. How many times have we had a former student come up to us and say, man, that time that you read my paper and gave me feedback, man, that made all the difference in the world. I'm going to tell two stories here. My son is a sophomore at the University of New Mexico. And like many of our students, he had a bumpy first semester. There were some life lessons learned. And thankfully, he figured out that things were not going so well. And he went to the director of student success in their honors college because someone had said, hey, you need to go talk to this lady. And he made an appointment. He walked in and he just laid it all out there. All the things that he had done wrong, the wrong track that he was on. And he said, I know I'm not doing the right things, but what do I need to do to get back on the right track? And I'm talking like the kid failed one of his classes, like my kid failed one of his classes. And she didn't see the student who wasn't going to class. She didn't see the student who was having trouble. She saw the potential. And she asked him about his passions and what he wanted to do and why he was thinking of a double major in theater and sociology. And she just gave him all these opportunities and said, here's how you can use your sociology and do research in this way. Here's some things the Honors College is up to. Oh, you should go talk to this professor. Hey, have you thought about a class that's about this? I mean, she just spent 15 minutes investing in the kid who was in front of her. And it made all the difference. Because anybody who's a parent knows they don't listen to us, but another adult says the thing and then they listen. And then I'll tell you another small story from my own teaching. I was out there in the wild doing a civic event, and one of my former students who had been graduated probably about 10 years came up and she's like, Dr. Neen, I don't know if you remember me. And I'm like, yeah, Laura, how you been? And she said, do you remember that time when I was really struggling financially and I was in your women in politics class and I was saying, I can't do the reading because I can't afford the book. And you said, hey, I've got this extra one, you can have it. And but I'll return it to you. And I said, no, that's an extra. You can have the publisher send me time. Like, here, take it. And she said, I still have that book. And I share it with other people because it's a really cool book. And I didn't remember giving it to her, honestly. I remembered her, but I didn't remember giving her the book. But it meant something to her. It meant a lot to her. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. It meant a lot to her. And moreover, she paid it forward. She told other people about the cool things she had learned in this class 5 years ago. And who knows where that information has ended up out there in the world. And just a small thing that I just thought was the right thing at the right, they always say, do the next right thing. I just thought that was the next right thing, was to give this woman a book because I had extras. So that's my spiel. Connection really matters. How did you mean to go on? Think about it, scale it down, and recognize that even though something might not have been important to you, it was important to them. Love it.
Okay, these are fabulous. We're going to hear from Diane. She's joining from Teams. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and we'll hear from Dr. Mitschke from School of Social Work.
Thanks, everyone. It's great to hear these stories. Rebecca, I am so excited that you talked about connection because that feeds so well into what I want to talk about too. So my topic is an icebreaker that I typically do the very first day of class, whether it's an online class or a face-to-face class. This activity works great either way. It is called Where I'm From. And it's based on a poem that was written by George Ella Lyons back in 1989. And it's a poem that asks you to think about your paradigm, the way that you were raised, the sights and the senses that you remember from your very youngest days. And so the very first day of class, that's what I have students do before we do anything else. I have them write a poem about where they're from. And I give them her poem as an example, and then they kind of take it and run with it. So I want to show you some excerpts of what my students said just this semester. So Peggy, if you can advance it to the next slide. Perfect. So these are just a few. The poems are actually several stanzas long, but I wanted to read you some of these so that you have an idea of what I'm getting. So I'm from tents of sand in the Middle East heat, from South Korea's streets where two cultures meet, from Carolina pines, Georgia clay beneath feet, Arizona sunsets, Texas storms that beat. I'm from Korean lunches and American cafeterias, kimbap eaten in secret, in fear of judgment, pretending to prefer the popular things because being different was weird. I'm from laughter that covers struggles, from hard work and making do, and the quiet strength of starting over again. I'm from the warm embrace of blackness, from jollof rice to the cornbread, from R&B to Afro beats. I'm from late nights in the gym and deep talks only God would understand, from 6 siblings and endless noise, but also the silence that came after. So you can see we're getting really deep really quickly. These are students that don't know each other. Many of them have never met one another. They are students often in their very first class, either as an undergrad, majoring in social work, or as a master's student coming into the program. And what it does is it breaks down barriers instantly, because as students stand up in the front of the room and present themselves to the rest of the class, it develops an empathy around these stories, and it helps students to see one another as having shared experiences and having the ability to talk about those things at a really deep level and connect with one another. And so, Peggy, if you can go to the next slide, these are some examples of what students are saying back in response to these poems. So this is from one of my online classes this semester. And you can see, I like how you tied in your family and military background. It really showed where your strength and responsibility came from. The part about your grandma's garden was so vivid, I could almost picture it. I could really feel the mix of challenges and strength in your words, especially the idea of finding comfort in family and faith. It reminded me how much hope can carry us forward, even when life feels uncertain. I really enjoyed listening to your poem and learning about your culture. Coming from a Hispanic household, I can relate to many of the things you mentioned, especially the Vicks Vapo Rub. Whether you were sick or injured, it was always the answer. I'm also from a small town, and I can remember the rides to Brookshire Brothers. It took me many years later to learn about the bliss of Halo Halo and Ube. So you can see students are developing these connections organically. They're putting themselves out there. And what it does is it sets this amazing groundwork for the work that we're doing the rest of the semester, where we're talking in class, where we're talking about hard things and difficult issues. It helps students connect to one another and realize that they have these things in common and that it's okay to be vulnerable. So that's where I'm from. Thanks, you all.
That's a very touching one. I just have to say, I used to do this activity also, and you know, reading writing connections. I used to kind of co-teach with Dr. Tice over here, and this is a good getting to know you activity. And even though the author is from rural Appalachia, it resonates with everyone. And so we would just talk about, well, what can you borrow from the author's style if you haven't? And the author reads her poem on the website. George Ella Lyon, it's a woman, even though her name is George. And it's just really great. The first line is, "I am from clothespins." And it really, and I grew up in rural Alaska, and so I could relate to that. So I think even though the author is from a different background, I think in these hard times, these trying times, sometimes when we feel like our voices are silenced, when students can write, I think that's great. So, okay, that's my 2 cents. For my literacy background. Come on up, Dr. Roemer. So round of applause for Dr. Roemer. I think everyone knows Ken. Come on up. He's English, but I'll let you introduce yourself. And you also taught English and writing.
I'll let you control
I'll
me.
do this, yeah.
And tell me when I have a minute left.
Okay, perfect. I'll wave at you. Yeah.
Okay, something interesting.
Up.
Interesting about me. The most interesting thing is third-rate singer, rhythm guitar player. Last weekend I was fourth rate because I confused my music and couldn't play anything. So that's what I've been concerned about is how can we get a much better sense of feedback from our students? I wanted something that was continuous feedback, not just thing poked at the end of the course. I wanted something that was simple to administer, something that gave me both macro and micro, you know, the big picture and little picture, and finally, some way that I could respond to the students, give them feedback on their feedback, which in effect empowers them because they show that they're teaching me. So what I do is this, and obviously you can adapt this to your courses. First, think of 1 or 2 questions, no more than that. I like to have one question that it's a big question. What did the class focus on? What was the main reason? And then the second question, actually, I enjoy much more. What little bit that either I said or a student said in their group solving or something in the text that really moved you? And then what I do is I say what I do, I haven't taught this since a long time, but when I did it, I reserved the last 5 minutes of the class. That sounds like it's not enough, but it really puts pressure and they get to work. They can write it on anything. They do have to put their name because this is a requirement, but it's not graded at all. So I get all sorts of different types of paper and things and I wrote it. And then they give it in. And then this depends on the size of the class. When I have a class that's maybe 12, 15 people, I can do everything myself. But when I had classes that from 90 to 120, luckily I was blessed with incredibly good TAs. And one of them, and I'll be showing you her work in a minute, she was a great typist. And she would type out the ones that were interesting, and then I would look at them too and go, and we could come to some conclusions about which is the ones we want to work with. And so then what we would do after we'd gone through them, I would begin the next class by going over their feedback. Now this helped them to remember what we did the last class. So that was that type of reinforcement. Okay, next slide. So this is some of the, and it was Miriam Roundtree, who was my TA in this. This is probably hard to read, so I'll give you some of them. The first section was the main focus. This was a story by by Melville, Bartleby the Scrivener. Some of you may have read it. And then the other one is an episode from Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. And they were just simple things. And, you know, like this one, since we're focusing on this interchange between two characters in a very obnoxious, I don't want to downgrade him too much. He's not a nice husband, and how she is responding to him. And in this case, most of the students in their simple statements, excuse me, they got it. I've had other times, I'll show you a slide in a minute, and I think I'll need some water. Ragweed. Actually, go to the next picture and I'll show you. I had one student who wanted to do all his responses. He was an art student, so didn't. And he had this about Jonathan Edwards, was kicked out of his church. He was, because he threw cold water on what they thought they were being saved, but was brought back as president. Well, not to the church. He was actually brought back as president to Princeton University. So at the beginning of the class, I could say, and I didn't give any names who wrote this, so that it gave me the opportunity to check, you know, if they'd made a mistake, you know, and if it was a big mistake, then I knew that I screwed up. And I had to go back and reteach parts of it. If you go back then. So most of the time they got this, but what really intrigued me was the little things that another student said, or that you said, that you might not have considered to be too important, but really, it's fine. Really is. Learn that TA is not great at drawing planets. Huh? This is about Bartleby. But we had this one thing when I was talking about when you're in a group, if it's if you know what's going on, it's like being in an orbit. If you're an outsider, it's a comet. And that's what Bartleby was doing, and that stuck with her. Student in the class sold phones. It was a boring job. Bartleby had this boring job, and it made him, you know, he tuned into this. But then I also got some pretty sophisticated ones. Bartleby is more close to the story about being isolation in the workplace. Most of the students in this class worked, so they processed it through that. On the other side, you know, there's some things that you say you don't even know you said it, but you got to be careful. I always love this one. Dr. Roemer, please never ask me to imagine that I'm dying again. And I said, where did that come from? But it was when I was comparing to Janie, and she was, so I have, you know, I got to watch what you say. Or here's one that I also like. Where is it? Oh, it's blocked out. Well, it's blocked. You should never tell a woman that she's old, her butt is saggy, lumpy, nasty, flat, how she do her hair, how she should live. That's the best way to know that you're going to be single the rest of your life. And then the last one was quite sophisticated. So, but what I like about this is that you had this whole range, and then at the beginning of the next class, I would share these, and what happened, and I'll finish here, a type of competition. I didn't give the name of the person, but you knew, and people wanted to get their comment read. So these comments got better and better. It was almost as if at the end of every class, they were writing a little paper. And I didn't intend that, and I learned a lot from it. So, and it's simple. It helps if you have a great big class. It helps to have a really good TA. Okay, thank you.
Great to hear from different disciplines.
All right, thank you. That's wonderful. And thank you for making the change from intellectual engagement and connection to feedback, which is a little bit what my topic is about. Let's see, okay. My name is Frank Foss. I'm an organic chemist. So I normally teach very large classes of long-suffering students who don't want to be there, but no, they need to be there if they want to go to medical school. So you've all seen the statement on syllabi before, by appointment only. That's when you can find me. And so I want to give you 2 things to think about and 2 little bit larger changes about how you use your office hours to enhance your own understanding of what your students are thinking, and also to learn how to teach better and also serve the students at the same time, hopefully. So, and I say as a disclaimer, I know very wonderful instructors, faculty members, our fellow ADT members who put by appointment only on their syllabus. So please, I'm not calling you out. My approach to trying to teach better is to pick one thing per semester and try and change that one thing. And sometimes it's a complete failure and sometimes it's wonderful. And you've already had a few examples. So if you're looking for something else to do, maybe thinking about how you talk to your students about office hours is the way to go. Okay, all of us have felt like this before. You know, I hope no one comes to office hours. I can actually get some work done. Okay. See, listen, I know that sometimes we're all people, sometimes you feel like that, but the students hear that and they hear it very loudly. Okay, and so the first thing you might think about doing is talking about your office hours a little bit differently. And so from the first day of class, I start calling them student hours. I know I stole this idea from someone a long time ago, and I have no idea who. I apologize. They could be in this room. Your office hours, talk about them as student hours. Talk about them as more hours the students get to utilize your time to work with you. Tell them what they do during their student hours, what they are not supposed to do during student hours. Okay, if you have boundaries that you want to set, you know, depending on the scale of your class, your availability, think about how you want those office hours to go. But what's really important is to make a sincere invitation to them to use this time to come with their friends. Give them reminders throughout the first few classes. Don't wait until the first exam and say, you know, I sit in my classroom and cry because I sit in my office hours and cry because no one's there. You know, remind them to come, especially anytime someone has a question. You can defer things to their student hours. You can tease optional topics. Oh, that's a great question, Ken, but why don't we talk about that? Anybody who's interested, my office hours or student hours are coming up, you know, whatever, we'll talk then. And then this is very effective, is to tell the students what happened at your last student hours. So you say, you know, yesterday we were talking and we came up with this great analogy about this topic that we talked about last week. So you can kind of summarize what happened last class with some things that carried over into your student hours. So I think that's changing just the way we discuss this extra time that we are contractually obligated to give to the students, but is really valuable. So, okay. Sometimes I said I teach a lot of pre-something students, whatever they're going to as a professional career. Sometimes within 5 seconds, I know the point of this conversation is not about education at all. The point of the conversation is that the student is telling me that they're going to medical school or they're going places in the world and they're wonderful and you're going to know them in 15 weeks and want to write them a glowing letter of recommendation. Okay, so that's fine. We're social animals. We can read social cues. And that's fine though, but you have to change your mindset about what's about to happen. This is yet another opportunity for you to market this time for your students. So instead of trying to push them away or, you know, yeah, I'll write you a letter, or no, you have to get an A, or, you know, being that, you know, we're always up against, you know, the amount of energy we have and the things we're trying to do. And sometimes it can feel like you're being used a little bit if someone's just there for your letter of recommendation and they don't even know you. I mean, it's kind of insulting a little bit. Maybe they don't want your recommendation. So anyways, turn this into a marketing hour. This is your connection hour. Try and say, well, yeah, let's talk, sit down. Tell me about yourself. What are you trying to do? What are you interested in? How do you think this class is going to fit into what you're doing? Have you ever considered a life as a chemist? Have you done research? You know, ask them questions, get them engaged, tell them something about your personal life. You know, I love baseball, you know, whatever it is. So ask them what they're doing in other classes. So don't miss this opportunity, because these are the students in your classes that are going to go back and everybody wants to study with them. And they say, oh, you can go talk to Dr. Foss. He's doors open and you can go. And why don't you ask him about that? Maybe leading to these small moments that are really important, right? So anyways, just changing a little bit about the ways that we talk about class, about these student hours. So, okay, 2 more things. Sometimes when the student gets to your office and they want to talk to you about an actual topic, you start regurgitating what you actually talked about. This is a complete waste of your time and their time in some ways. Okay, treat them with the respect in like a classical sense. Think that this person's intelligent. They're here, they are here, they're learning, they have the opportunity to learn this stuff. You know, avoid self-plagiarism. Don't just regurgitate the examples you talked about the day before, because obviously they didn't understand them or had some missing connection between what they knew and what they need to know. So perform a post-mortem. How did you understand this? What didn't you understand? Where can we go? And let me tell you, the best part about time in your student hours trying to solve problems is coming up with new analogies, coming up with new connections. This is where my best lessons, you know, I'm trying to talk about things we can't even see in the natural world around us. And, you know, the students are trying their best, but sometimes it's hard to conceptualize a chemical bond. And then we tell them things like, and orbitals aren't real anyways. And then they go, now you're just lying to me, right? So, so it's these times in your office where you're really going to learn the key moments. And something that I started to do during COVID is if I come up with a real gem, and I realize there's a mistake or a misunderstanding in class from this feedback, I'll record a 5-minute lecture or a 5-minute, hey, you know, we were in office hours and we went over this problem. This might help a few of you who are missing this connection. And then I'll use that new analogy immediately to try and connect the new topic that we're teaching to the students. So, you know, never miss that moment. If you are, you know, sharing videos or sharing content, and I'm not really great at this, but COVID taught me how to do a little bit of it, but I'll just record that and say, hey, this could help you. If you have 5 minutes, watch this. Okay. Then I'll leave this for another topic. But if you are really thinking about things you could do with your office hours, you could consider converting them to a recitation hour that you actually get to work with students through 2 or 3 problems. Nothing new, nothing graded, just more practicing together if you really want to know what your students are, what they know. So, and thank you very much.
It's a challenge, isn't it? Okay, we're going to hear from Dr. Nila, Stephanie, and round it out with Karen Magruder online. Yeah, so go for it. Here's your script. Sorry to cut you all off.
No, you have to.
Yeah, here you go. Okay. Can you wait when I have 2 minutes and then 1 minute?
Yes. Oh, wait. Yeah. And then just, yeah, microphone.
So, hello everyone. So I am from Department of Physics, and let's come to this activity I want to share with you all today. So this is Stand If It Is You activity. It's an active learning activity, and I have used that in small class where I have about 20 students. I have used it in big class where I have 200 plus students. I have used it quickly as a roundup in 5 to 10 minutes. I have used it where I have spent the whole class period. Okay, and it can be used when you are comparing stuff. Okay, that could be concepts, perspectives, case studies, any of those things. Okay, and you can work in a large class just dividing the class into 2 groups, or you can work by dividing the class into multiple groups, depending on your topic and depending what you want to cover. Okay, And I have done it in my face-to-face class. Okay. It can be probably changed into online environment, but we can talk about that later on. But the one that so how it works, I gave you what scenarios I have used. So my whole aim to say here is everybody can use it. But okay, so how it works? Let's demonstrate it. Okay? So now comes the main part. So in this activity, I was thinking, what topic should I demonstrate? Because I don't want anything that you are not familiar with. So I thought, okay, let me just pick. So after thinking, I came up with this idea. So our topic today is going to be phones, because we all use phones. Okay? So I'm going to divide, this is the class. Okay? So I'm going to divide the class into only 2 teams today. Okay? So let's say this is all one team and this is all another team. So please do not use your devices at this time. Okay? And online, those who are online can also join. They can just put their answers in the chat. Just please make sure you are also not Googling the answers, or so that's not, then it's not fun. Okay? So this team over here, would you like to be Android or iPhone?
iPhone.
All right. So this team is representing iPhone and this team is representing Android phones. Okay. So I'm going to read a feature or a property. And if you think that belongs to iPhone, okay, you are going to stand up. If you think that belongs to Android phones, you all are going to stand up. Okay. And you have to convince your teammates, hey, either stand up or keep seated. Okay. So it's not only stand, you are going to talk quickly, right? So I'm going to go ahead and read. Okay. So be ready. Okay. And again, as I mentioned, people online can just put it on chat. Okay. Your answer without Googling. So this was the first to introduce face unlock. This phone was the first to introduce face unlock.
Face unlock.
Yes.
Oh, facial recognition.
Yes. So talk to each other, convince quickly, 10 seconds.
No.
But it would be, it's infrared, that's all I know.
Really.
I think infrared cameras.
So
you think
I
think
Okay.
I thought they had it.
I think so my husband has an Android, I have an iPhone, and but he's so savvy that
Okay, talk, convince. Think which phone was the first one to use the facial recognition to unlock.
Because the iPhone went with the touch first, right? Before the facial, so I think.
I have only 1 minute. All right, so let's do it quickly. Okay. All right. So are you confident on your answer?
I'm gonna be confidently wrong.
Okay. Are you confident on your answer?
no.
Okay. If you want to know the answer, please stand up. Please sit down.
Well, shoot. Well, that's what we started.
So the right answer is iPhone. So that's the reason I said, hey, stand up. And please sit down. Okay, my time is up. So like this, I give different, you got the idea. Sometimes one team stands, another team stands. Sometimes you give the both teams stand. And they have to, convince each other. And as I mentioned, I have done it very quickly in 5 to 10 minutes. I have spent the whole period. Only thing I would like to mention here, sometime if your team is standing, I will ask the other team to discuss and counter argue or something. So that's how I spend the whole period. So it depends on the what we want to cover. And sometimes, hey, it's only 5 minutes. Ask, and okay. So with this, since my time is up, I'll.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Rasmussen. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Accounting, and I want to tell you about a technique I use, which I call connecting with students through personalized feedback. So I'll tell you what I mean by that, when I give this feedback to my students, how I go about doing it, and some of the results that I've seen. So what I mean by personalized feedback is sending every student an email addressed directly to them, giving them feedback about their performance in the class. And that's acknowledging whether their performance is good or that point or bad at that point in time. I want to also give them steps, actionable steps they can take within the next 1 to 2 weeks of class to help them out and get them either on track if they're not, or continue with the good progress I'm already seeing. I want to give them advice on how to prepare for future exams, since those are so heavily weighted when it comes to grading in the course, and also point out resources available like tutoring and things that they might find useful. I also provide an invitation. Come to my office or reach out to me if you would like to meet one-on-one and talk more about your own situation. So when do I do this? I give 4 exams during the semester. After the first exam, I give this personalized feedback to students who earned a D or an F, because I want to get them on track as quickly as possible. For all the other students, I send everyone an email after exam 2. That's about halfway through the semester, so I have a really good gauge of how they're all performing. Now, this might sound overwhelming, particularly in large classes, but I've actually found it's really not that bad. So I use Excel, but I know we have Inspire for Faculty and Civitas and other things we can use. But I really like Excel, so I just download my Canvas gradebook. I use sorting and filtering, and then categorize students into maybe like 6 different groups. So I had a category name for each student line in my Excel download. And then I go into Word and I write 6 emails, 1 for each group. Because really it's individualized, but their performance is very similar to a large number of other students in the class. So then once I have these 6 emails, I can mail merge that with my Excel file, and 20 students in group 1 are all getting the same email, but it says it's to Mason or Norma or whatever their name is. And they think I wrote it personally just for them. And so it goes pretty quickly. I found in terms of results, some pretty striking things. First, overwhelming appreciativeness for getting an email that's addressed directly to them. I have had students all the way up to master's students who've said, this is the first time a professor ever sent me an email directly to me with my name in the email. And I find that sad in a way, and I'd like to see more of us finding ways to connect with our students. I'm more of an introvert, and so it's a little easier for me to send an email and try to start conversations with students that way. And for me, it's been very successful. I find students are often more comfortable approaching me when they face other challenges on campus when I form this connection with them. So for instance, just the other day when I was creating this slide, a student knocked on my door while I was making this slide, walking down the hall, upset about her performance in another class and needed someone to talk to. And so she came in, we talked about what was going on. I gave her some advice about how to talk to that other professor, but I know she never would have come and spoken to me if she hadn't felt a connection with me. Okay. I also want to emphasize that I have seen remarkable responses from my strong students when I send these emails. Many times our resources go toward helping those students who are failing in a class or underperforming. But the students who are doing well need encouragement, and they need that recognition and support to continue going on. The most striking example I have there is a student who was earning a B in my class. And so her email was, hey, I see you've done great on these first 2 exams. Keep up the hard work. If you do have questions or feel like you need access to more resources, just let me know. And she came up to me after class saying, you know, I've been working so hard this semester and I just really needed some encouragement. And your email came on the day I really needed to hear that I was doing well. So thank you. And they keep these emails, some of them, and they go back and read them later when they need more encouragement. So it's striking what a word of encouragement can do, what an email that includes their name can do to make them see that they are not just a face in the crowd, but someone actually recognizes them as an individual. So if you've never tried anything like this before, I would encourage you to do it and just see what types of connections it might create between you and your students.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, last but not least, and this hour has gone by so fast, is we might have time for a question or two at the end. is Karen Magruder, and she's joining on Teams. So Karen, if you want to go ahead and unmute if you're not already.
I am. Hi.
Hi, Karen, go for it.
Okay,
You're our last
wonderful.
presenter.
Wonderful. So I was adapting this presentation from a full training that I did where I actually gave 45 strategies for humanizing asynchronous learning. And I realized that in a 5-minute lightning round, that's like 9 tips per minute. And I don't have my auctioneer voice on today. So I distilled this into what I'm calling my greatest hits as defined by students, really centering that student perspective. So I had received some feedback from students from that original presentation on what they thought was the most impactful for them, and also reviewed some of my student feedback comments and picked out, the most common commendations related to connection in asynchronous online courses. And so I came up with, next slide, the top 4 ways to humanize asynchronous online courses. And so that is, the first 3 are all videos. So videos, videos, videos. They want to see you. They want to hear from you. They want to know who you are. And so the first is a syllabus overview video. So in these online courses, I'll record a video. It usually ends up being about 20 minutes long. I would prefer it to be shorter, but I try and give a lot of detail to support their success in the course. And that corresponds to a syllabus quiz or attestation about some of the key points from the course that they should be aware of. And so kind of talking through the major assignments, how to contact me, and really adding a lot of warmth and enthusiasm to, for example, office hours. Come, I want to hear from you. There's no dumb questions. My job is to, respond to you, and I'm here for you, and so forth. And so really helping them to be successful and knowing what's expected. And selfishly, that reduces a lot of questions I get. Sometimes colleagues say, oh, beginning of the semester, I'm getting so many emails. And I'm like, well, you get fewer when you do things like this, and they have less questions to ask, which is wonderful. Also, a humanizing introduction video. When I first started on faculty, I kept it very strictly professional. And over the years have started, of course, within professional boundaries, sharing a little bit more about me and what makes me me. And so sharing about my animals and other things help folks connect to me. And even years later, I'll have students make comments about things I said about my dogs or things I don't even remember, but they remembered, and it helped them see me as being more approachable and more of a real person. And then assignment overview videos too. On every single assignment page in online courses, I record a brief video that outlines the key points of the assignments and also the rubric and what I'm looking for, and giving them some tips in completing the assignment and doing so successfully. And again, that not only helps with different types of learners and having another medium to understand the expectations, but also can really reduce anxiety, because it goes beyond, okay, here's what's written, to they actually have confidence. Okay, I know that my instructor, this is what they're looking for. And then finally, email responsiveness. This isn't going to be, a major shock to you all, I'm sure, but we get so busy with our day-to-day, and responsiveness to emails is not always the highest priority. But if we think about our fully online students, that might be the only way that we interact with them directly. And so having to wait or a long time for a response, or maybe not even getting one at all, can really, again, add to that frustration and anxiety. And so really trying to make it a priority to be responsive, not only with being prompt, but also being warm in your responses. Thanks for reaching out. I'm so glad you asked, things like that, to encourage more of that interaction in the future. Those are my tips.
Everyone, we really appreciated that, and I meant to put everyone's Mentis link in there. Karen has a great YouTube channel, and she has over 12,000 subscribers on it, and so she's got material that really resonates with people beyond the classroom. Any questions for any of these fabulous people, or if you want to add a comment?
First of all, thank you, everybody. All of those were great presentations in a very short time. So I really appreciate. I was just noting down some of the things, just to some comments. Um, so I really like, like Dr. Roemer mentioned, last 5 minutes of the class, and I do same thing. But I know he had a great TAs who helped in typing. So I use actually Canvas. So students directly type their answers on Canvas, and I read it on the spot. So if that helps, I hide the screen from the students because I don't want, I tell, hey, no names. Usually the Canvas is on and students can read name, but at that last 5 minutes, I just hide the screen and then I just read their comments right out there. So if that helps, it's faster. The student typing directly on Canvas. You can just put a small quiz. Hey, what did you learn in the class? What were your challenges? And all that. So that was one comment I thought. And I also like you mentioned about office hours, connections hours, student hours. I also call it coffee hour that I also stole from other people. So yeah, candy hour if you have candies in your room, or coffee hour. So, so it's just other names. And I know, and I also use emails, and I already have the email, like Stephanie mentioned, she has emails she sends to students who are making A or B or C or D, whatever grades based on there. And so I actually, there is a feature in the grade book itself. On Canvas grade book, you can select the students, hey, you want to email the students who made more, less than this. So I'm just telling that those features are there if anybody wants to use.
Well, I don't know. So anybody else? We can stay a few minutes, or we're not. If you need to leave, we get it. And there's food and water in the back and coffee.
Is it noon now?
Yeah.
So I have to go to my office hour workshop. I got 2-hour workshop block in a different room, and I say, hey, come on over. We're going to all work together on these homework problems. Everybody can work with everybody else. And it's really fun. They get on the boards and I'm there and we help. And it goes by so fast. And I leave and they're still talking about it. So have office hours could be like work sessions where all the students work together and get their stuff done. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all. I really appreciate everybody's talk. It was really nice.
Thanks, everyone. We'll do this again. Should we do this again?
Yeah.
Another time? Okay. Well, we might do 90 minutes, so we're not a little more loose. Yeah, thank you. And it's your idea. So we'll get together again. We appreciate everyone. It's good to see you, all of you, in person, since I'm online all the time.
Right, I know, isn't it? But it's never, you always think of new things, right? It's amazing.